is the Short-Term Management Show. The show that is all about short-term rental property management, hosted by yours truly, Luke Carl. There he is. There's my man, my dude, my HVAC guy.
That's it. That's what's up.
The king of the HVACs. I love this guy, David. He is one of my HVAC guys, and he does HVAC in the Emerald Coast of Florida. David, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you doing today, Luke?
I'm great. And you got two first names, so we already know we can't
right.
trust you.
Well, you know, when back in 1980 when I was born, Gavin was the first name. So.
Is that true? It's a new first name?
It's a new first name, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
That's right.
Now, Carl has never been a last name. It's always been a first name. So
yeah.
Every time I go to the dentist, it's hey, Carl Lucas. You know.
That's right. Yeah. So
let's talk HVACs as far as rental real estate is concerned. You are living in a rental real estate area. Do you personally own any? What's your rental real estate experience, if any?
Well, I don't personally own any. It's just actually working for a lot of property management companies. I mean, I would say it's probably where we live. It could be 50 to maybe 60% of our customer base is property management companies.
Obviously, what you're saying is way more property managers than homeowners. Even the homeowner doesn't call you very often.
No. I mean, the homeowner, it's the people that are, I guess, people that maybe operate their property on their own and don't use a management company. But I would say even the homes down here on the Emerald Coast, I would say probably 70 to 80% of these homes are either second homes or income properties for people.
Right, or both.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's pretty rare, what you're saying, to get a guy like me that actually owns the home and rents it out himself, like on Vrbo and Airbnb. Yeah,
which is actually our favorite customers. Like if we can get in front of the homeowner, that's perfect. But that's the challenging part because these people are living, a lot of people come from Texas here, Atlanta, Nashville, Chicago, Quebec, right? So getting in front of those homeowners is challenging, especially for us.
But it's easier for you to cut out the middleman, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Property manager?
If I could cut them, if I could get a property manager who has 200 properties and I could just get their list of owners, then I could just call them direct, and that'd be the $1 million answer for all my problems.
That's fascinating. Is it because the property managers why are they so hard to deal with?
Well, and that's selective. Different companies. It depends on how busy they are, right? So here, it's everybody's short-staffed, and property management companies are overwhelmed with work. Okay, especially come March through October or Labor Day, right? And they call us out. For instance, we go out to a property mainly on a Saturday on the turn day when all the problems arise. And then we fix that problem, but say, hey, there's more problems. And then we either send a text, a phone call, or an email, and that kind of gets lost through the weeds because they don't get a hold of the homeowner, right? So it's finding property management companies. You've got to have somebody that's pretty responsive and on the ball to handle these problems. Because if we send out an estimate, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, a homeowner might call us and say, hey, we got this estimate or we got this problem that our property management company, told us about. How come it hasn't been completed yet? And so we're kind of handcuffed because the property manager is really my customer, but the owner is the owner and they want the problem fixed. And I can't really tell them that the property management company kind of might have dropped the ball.
This is a very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Where does the billing go? The billing goes through the property manager?
That's right. Yeah. It goes through the property managers. Yeah.
Any idea if they're probably marking that up to the owner?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. There's a few that do. There's a few that they'll come right out and say, hey, we mark it up 30%.
They tell you that, or they have to disclose that to the owner as well, I would imagine.
I don't know. I don't know how they operate.
I've never used property
I
management in short-term rental. Many property managers in long-term rental, but it's an interesting perspective. And we see a lot of our listeners, we and myself included, I get stuck in my own little bubble where I just assume everybody's putting their house on Verbo and doing it themselves. That's what we do here at the management show, but it's great to hear your perspective. And I'll tell you why, because we feel like we're like these little fish in this big pond, but really at the end of the day, if the guy that's doing it himself on Verbo and Airbnb, these property managers, they can't really compete with a guy like me. And it's for exactly reasons why you're saying right now, like just to get an HVAC done is like pulling teeth. And that's, I mean, you can't run the house without an HVAC,
Yeah, you can't. And then you're predicated on the property manager. He might be too nervous to call the homeowner on a weekend and say, hey, your AC unit needs $1,000 worth of work, or it's a 12-year-old machine and you need to replace it, right? But like with you, I call you and I say, Luke, this is what's going on with your property. And you say, yeah, man, let's fix it or let's replace it, right? So sometimes it's hard for us. What I would recommend is if somebody is got a management company and not doing Verbo, they just ask for the invoice. Let me see the invoice. Right. That way everything's transparent.
Yeah. And then again, if you get a guy like me, it's easier for you schedule wise because I can just say, hey, it's open on this day or that day. Go check it out. Right. And if it's through a property manager, it's probably like pulling teeth to figure out when you can even go over there.
It is. Door codes are wrong.
Oh, really? You show up and the door code's wrong and then they don't answer the phone?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Man. That's not
cool.
Or
the guests don't know you're there, so now picture this. You get a service call at 4 p.m. Guests just come in, they roll in, they check in, right? And then we don't get out there because we're busy till 9:00 at night. And it's a second floor unit, right? And nobody's coming to the door and all the lights are off. What do? You got door code. Do you go in the house? Right? So it's hard sometimes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, see, that's where as self-managers, we can get in big trouble for that. With the platforms, with Airbnb and Verbo, if the HVAC tech goes in the house without like written permission, we can get bumped off Verbo or or Airbnb. Really, they're super strict about it. But that's a conversation for another day. Interesting, very interesting perspective. Let's talk HVACs in general, just like I'm a 3-year-old, right? Like, explain to me how the system works. And of course, we're in Florida. So, but you're from up north. You're from originally from outside of Boston, yeah?
That's right.
All right. So, give me a brief overview of an HVAC system. Like, if I'm a 5-year-old kid that I have no idea, and what is the difference between a cold area of HVAC and a warm area HVAC? This episode is brought to you by the premier short-term rental Facebook group, Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. We have nearly 50,000 members. And this is the biggest independently owned and operated STR Facebook group, and it has been curated by yours truly, Cashflow Carl. Join us on Facebook. Search the groups for Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. That's Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth on Facebook.
Yeah, so like, for instance, in Boston or in the Northeast, you got more forced hot water units. You could have steam systems, right? So you got a boiler in the basement or an oil-fired or gas-fired furnace.
In a single-family home, you can have a boiler.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what we got is, we call it the heat belt line. So it kind of starts at like North Carolina and goes across the country. So what we got in Florida are heat pumps. So it's mainly like an electric unit. Okay, your outdoor unit's going to run for heat and cool. Okay, but up north, your outdoor unit's just going to run for the AC mode. So here in Florida, especially here in Northwest Florida, they average about 14,000 times an air conditioner is going to turn on and turn off. I mean, that's a lot of use. So the biggest thing you really want to do is you want to do maintenance on your system, right? So that way you can limit the phone calls on the weekends when a guest checks in, right? Because they want to be comfortable and cool. So really just got the outdoor unit. It's going to pump refrigerant through some copper lines to the indoor unit. Coil gets cold or it gets hot, and then you got a blower that moves the air inside. So it's really just, that simple. I'm trying to keep it simple because HVAC can be pretty complex with temperatures and pressures and I could probably lose a lot of people talking about it.
So in other words, in the South, these systems are more simple.
Yeah, I'd say they're more simple. I mean, unless you get a guy that's from Boston that's never worked on a heat pump, then he might say, hey, these are kind of challenging. I'd rather go back and work on a boiler, right? But yeah, it's a little newer to technology down here. You know, up north, there was nothing for me to be working in Boston, going into a basement outside of Boston, and then walking up to little Miss Jones at her house and say, hey, you really need to think about replacing this unit because when this was installed, my granddad was two, right? Because they just last 100 years. Asbestos wrapped boilers and furnaces, and down here you don't really got that. The problem nowadays is equipment is just not made like it used to be, right? So if you get 10 to 12 years out of a heat pump unit in Florida, you did good. So units just aren't going to last 20, 25 years anymore.
And down here, you're dealing with a lot of rust. How prevalent is that in the replacement of the unit? Is the salt air tearing them up bad, or is it not that big a deal?
Oh, it's actually, this is the worst part of Florida for that. So, you know, living in the East Coast, Central Florida, Southwest Florida, and now here in the Emerald Coast, I can't explain it, Luke. The only thing I can think of is the way the jet stream runs that salt air up, just due north and just blasts us here in the Emerald Coast. It just eats away. I mean, you could have a unit sitting on the beach, you know, house on the beach with 2 units, and you might change them 6, 7 years. They got to get replaced. So it's really important to buy the right machine for the conditions that you're living in.
What do you mean by right machine? There's some that stand up to the rust better than others?
That's right. Yeah. So like Train is the top brand that we sell. We really don't recommend anything but a Train unit.
Or American Standard. Like this is a higher end unit is what you're saying.
That's right. Well, American Standard is a Train unit. So you got Train, and then they sell like 3 lines of air conditioners, right? Carrier sells like 6 lines of air conditioners, right? They just try to control the market. The equipment is really all made in the same factory, just with a different label or a different color. So it's really just an illusion they try to create to really control the market with more options for consumers.
And certain HVAC guys, they only carry maybe you have your wheelhouse, right? Like you have a particular brand that you like, and that's what you install on the regular, and then the other guy might have a different brand. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's right. You become like a dealer. So you would choose a piece of equipment that you choose to sell, and you would go to that distributor and say, hey, I want to sell your product, and they'll make you a dealer. So we're like trained comfort specialists. Doesn't mean we can't get other pieces of equipment. We just prefer to sell Train. You know, it's just
So a lot of times if I'm like a person that's doing a massive amount of research online and I find a particular brand that I like, I'm going to need to go find the guy that can do that brand, is what you're saying.
For the most part, yeah, unless, you know, you call me and I just can't talk you out of the machine you want, but you really want me to do the job, we'll go get that unit for you and put it in. That's not a problem.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. But what you're saying is the higher end, whichever brand it is, the higher end version of that, the most expensive version, is going to stand up to the salt air down here in Florida more than the cheaper brand. And why is that?
Just technology. Like Train's outdoor unit is what they call a spine fin aluminum coil, and that just holds up the longest. Okay, the next competitor would be a Carrier line, and Carrier makes just a regular outdoor unit, and then they'll make something that's called a coastal coated unit, to where they put like a protective coat in at the factory. So you might get an extra 2 or 3 years out of that unit sitting on the beach. But hands down, we could be, you know, on a building here with 100 air conditioners, and you could have a Carrier coastal coated unit side by side with a Train unit the same age, and the Train unit always looks better and always lasts longer.
100 units, you're talking about condo?
Like a condo building.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does it look like up there? Are most of those, like when you get up there, are most of those units a complete disaster, or what does it look like?
Yeah, for the most part, they are. Yeah. So the worst is when you get to a condo by yourself and you got 18 floors, right? And you got 1,800 air conditioners up on the roof. and nothing's labeled. And you got to try to find the one you're trying to work on.
How do you do that?
Well, you hope that strategically they line them up in a row to where you got, okay, the number 8 buildings are in this row, the number 7, condos are in this row, and the 6th one, so on. But yeah, we got a few tricks, but yeah, it can be challenging, a lot of up and down. And you don't want to be at that condo building on a Saturday during the turn day because you just got to wait for the elevator. So yeah, it could be, yeah.
Do you have one guy down at the thermostat turning it on and off and waiting to see which one comes on?
In a perfect world, yeah, but you never have 2 guys on a job on a Saturday.
Oh, because they're all running around on different jobs.
That's right, yeah, or just the on-call guys, or so yeah. In a perfect world, you have 2 guys to a van, but
see, let this be a lesson to my self-managers. Don't do Saturday-only turns, and your problems are solved. Like if I'm able to get in the summertime, all these property managers, and again, we're talking. David specializes in Florida, and in this area. All the property managers do Saturday to Saturday. So they check out on Saturday, it checks in on Saturday. So Saturday is a complete catastrophe for everybody, including the cleaner, guys like David trying to fix the HVAC, the plumbers, everybody. They're all trying to get everything done in like 5 hours to get this thing ready. Guy like me, I do, 4-night minimum. So I might turn on a Tuesday or a Thursday. And it's much easier to get vendors and workers. And my cleaners love me. Let me put it that way, because every other house, if they're working for a big company, they can only work on Saturdays 1 day a week, and they come work for me, and I'm doing my own thing on Verbo, and then boom, they're much happier. They can make more money, and it's way less stress. So I can imagine that you like that too. We need to find you some more self-managers, man.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Well, it's vacation land here, right? So Verbo's great for people that do it on their own, but it's just so, this place is just filled with property management companies. There's a new one popping up left and right. But they're tough, though. I mean, I would much rather work for somebody that's got 4 or 5 properties, or, and just deal with them direct, because they really do a better job, right? The homeowners that have these property management companies that have 200 properties, they're gunslinging on the weekends, right? And that's when the problems pop up. So, really the biggest thing for an owner is they just want to do preventative maintenance on the equipment. Whether you're in Seattle or you're in Florida, filters, sounds pretty trivial, and it's such a cheap part, and you just take it out and you replace it. But, a lot of times you're predicated on a cleaner to change the air filter. A lot of times the filters aren't the right size, so air bypasses around the filter, and after 4 or 5 years, your indoor coil gets all dirty. And then you got to spend money to chemically clean that. The efficiency goes down on the unit, and it becomes a problem in a service call, when all you need to do is just do preventative maintenance.
How serious is the filter? Because, I think a lot of folks, they hear about this air conditioner, HVAC filter, and they just roll their eyes and say, it's almost like like going to the dentist. They let it go too long, which, maybe
that's right.
Maybe a bad analogy, because hopefully people are taking care of their teeth out there. But how serious is that? Is it like the most annoying thing in your life when you show up in these dirty filters?
It is, because they cost like $6, and you got to change it like every 3 months, right? So, I mean, what's that going to be? A few dollars a year, right? Well, if you don't change your filter, that coil is going to get completely plugged up and impacted with debris, dog hair, dust, and what it's going to do is it's going to ice up your coil. And if the homeowner's not there, the place isn't getting rented, that thermostat's left at 76 degrees, the coil that gets plugged up, it becomes a big block of ice, and then it thaws, and then water drips. And I mean, it could be a disaster. You walk into your house, your ceiling fell through all over a filter. And then if they don't change the filter and the filter gets plugged, it's like breathing with a cold, right? You don't want to breathe with your nose all stuffed up. You're going to blow your nose, or you're going to flush it out, or you're going to do something, right? So that's really, a filter is very critical for an air conditioner.
Interesting. So, I think people just blow it off like they're,
they don't care. Yeah. And if it's not the right size, air will get around it, and you'll still plug up your filter. So people might think, oh, well, it's close, it almost fits, but no, not quite, buddy.
Might as well not even have it. So you're saying the coil, what about, does the filter itself ever get so clogged that the air can't get through, or is it usually to the point where that happens also, or
oh yeah,
separate issue?
Sure. Yeah, you'll ice up a unit all over a dirty filter. So picture this. Picture you got a guest shows up, right? And it's the first one of the season, okay? And the filter's been plugged all year. And the coil's a big block of ice, and it's 4 in the afternoon, and it's 110 degrees outside. And they got 30 people in this house, right? And the doors are open. All the patio doors are open. Look at the beach. It's beautiful. And the AC and all this hot air is just coming into the house, right? And then they call us, and we show up, and the coil's a block of ice.
Yeah.
The quickest way for me to thaw that coil is to turn the heat on. And that's the worst thing I could do to these people, right? Or you just let the thing run with the outdoor unit off. You say, hey, we'll be back tomorrow. So either way, they're going to be hot. So I got to heat up the house even more and quicker, right, to thaw this thing. And by then, it doesn't get down to temperature until they wake up in the morning. And they're not happy. They're leaving somebody a bad review, or they're making a phone call, right, all over a $6 part.
Change your filters. And if for my self managers, you can schedule that. Most cleaners are cool with, as long as you ship your cleaner like a 6-pack of filters or something, put them in the heater closet. In Florida, most of the time it's an indoor outdoor, a split unit. So I just throw like a 6-pack in with the indoor unit. And then, here's another thing on Airbnb and Verbo. Well, this is more on Airbnb. This is a big deal these days. If they have a new rule that they didn't really announce, but if a guest calls, David, I don't know if you're aware of this. You're going to hate this. If a guest calls and says the air conditioner filter is dirty, they will give the guest a refund because your property was not, like up to snuff or whatever. They have terminology for it. So what I'm doing now is I'm writing the date on the filters and changing them every 30 days. Because that way, if a guest because what'll happen is the guests will hear about this crap, and they'll just like show up at the house and send a picture, or maybe they even have one on their phone from their house or whatever, send it to Airbnb, try and get a refund. So then I can be like, okay, you know what? No, here's the deal. Here's the picture I have with the date that I replaced this thing. It's only 14 days old, and so you get yourself off the hook with that. It's a difficult situation because it's right both ways. It is. The guest should not have to be dealing with a dirty HVAC filter and the possibility of the HVAC not functioning properly. That I'll give them that. But at the same time, implementing this system where they can call and get a refund, that's a bunch of crap too, right? So it's kind of a sticky situation. So I've just been writing the date on my filters. Talk to me about the clogged condensate drain. I get this all the time. What causes that, and do I need to do preventative maintenance, and how do I do that?
Yeah, so that's probably the most prevalent problem we get on an air conditioner here. So, normally what you have is you got a 3/4 inch PVC drain line, okay? And what happens is, in Florida, that unit will literally drain about 20 gallons of water a day, okay? And then what happens is you got a pipe, and it's like a clogged artery, right? So there's like a slime stalactite that forms in that pipe. And that starts to close up like this. And then it closes up and closes up. And then we show up after years of nobody ever cleaning it. And then all we do is just blow some pressurized air through that line, okay, and add some chemicals. But it takes a while to kind of scrape away at that inner line of the pipe. So the best thing for owners to do and really have your cleaners do it is every time they change the filter, just pour like a half a cup of straight bleach right down that drain line. You can't pour enough down. Over time, it'll start to eat away at that line and keep it clean. So yeah, that's a pretty, like, filters, bleach, just doing those two small things, man, can go a long way on the life expectancy.
Pour a little bit of bleach down the condensate drain. How often?
You can't pour enough down.
Not possible.
In the summer, once a month.
Because it's just going to drain out to the outdoors anyway, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just drains outside. So, some people can say you can pour apple cider vinegar down there, okay? But most companies, when they do preventative maintenance, will pour a chemical and a treatment down there. So that's another reason to do maintenance on your systems.
And how do I do this? This is on the indoor unit, and it's PVC pipe. And explain it to me if I'm 4 years old. How do I do that?
Yeah. So if you're looking at your unit, most times it's on the bottom left or the bottom right of the indoor unit. Okay. And normally it's just a 3/4 inch pipe, and you'd see like a cap on something that you could just kind of twist off. It's not glued. It's just a PVC piece of pipe with a cap on it in a fit in, and you would just pull it up, and you would have a 3/4 inch T sit in there, and you just pour it in with, like, I tell people to pour it in a Pyrex cup if you don't have a funnel, and just with a steady hand just pour it right down that pipe, and it will just flush it right out and then run outside.
And it's mold is the issue. Mold creates and it clogs it up, right? And so the bleach will basically eat away at the mold.
Yeah, it's like a stalactite. It's kind of like a weird substance. It's actually pretty, it's actually pretty gross.
Yeah.
You don't want to touch it. I know that. And then, rub your face. You don't want to put any of that in your sandwich.
Okay. Now, what if I've got a package unit? We see that a lot of times in like Tennessee, where it's the entire unit is outdoor.
Yeah.
Do I need to worry about a condensate drain on those, or?
Yeah, it's still a good idea in theory to clean that and have maintenance. I mean, it's a mechanical device, right? That's going to fail. So you still got the same thing. It's just now self-contained into one square box. So you don't have everything's outside. But if your drain line does back up on a package unit, it's really just going to leak out and onto the ground. So you wouldn't
out
really
over the top,
right,
and onto the ground, as opposed
to in the base of the unit.
As opposed to a split unit with the indoor unit, if it starts to back up, it's going to screw up the sheetrock and all this other stuff in the home, right? That's the problem.
Right. Big problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then talk to me about mini splits. These are getting very popular. You put one in one of my houses, and tell me about them. And again, we are in Florida. It's very, very hot here. So is that a factor? And do you like them or not?
Yeah, so I personally don't like mini splits. I would rather go work in a major city on a big water-cooled chiller than work on a little tiny, mini split that's the size of your computer screen. They're very tedious. A lot of times it's called a tech support, right? For the most part, you really just on a maintenance thing, you just wash the filters and you clear out the drain line. Normally on a mini split, you wouldn't pour bleach down the drain line because you'd have to take it off the wall. You would just grab a vacuum cleaner, go outside, find the pipe, and suck out the drain line. If it's not a drain line or refrigeration issue, most times you're calling tech support to try to diagnose the unit. And then nowadays, mini splits, a lot of manufacturers are having a hard time getting parts for it, right? So we have situations where we've sold mini splits to customers and they got a bad, motherboard, an inverter board out in their unit, and we can't get that for weeks out. So now these people have no AC in that, so we've actually replaced the whole entire unit for a customer just to keep them happy.
When does a mini split come in handy? Why am I installing this thing to begin with?
I mean, it serves they serve their purpose. Okay. It's really in spaces where you might not be able to run ductwork. Okay. Or you might have a real small space that really, a conventional air conditioner might be too big for that space. So with a mini split, you can kind of get a smaller BTU machine, right? Like a garage or a little office area that might be a 200 square foot room. That's where you would want a mini split. And as far as, installing them, they're really easy to install. Guys can get in, get out. So they do serve their purpose. But now they're putting mini splits in whole homes now, and the problems we're seeing with that is, say you're in your second floor and you got 4 bedrooms, but there's only 2 mini split heads. But what happens to the other bedrooms that don't have a direct air blowing on them, or bathrooms, right? I mean, you get out of the shower, you might be hot or cold, and you got no air trying to cool you down or removing the humidity. So it's they're not. I don't recommend them.
Okay, yeah, it sounds to me like I'm picturing you getting a phone call about a mini split and rolling your eyes.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Now talk to me real quick about price tags. Let's say I want to put a new, and how do I know when I need a new unit? Like, when you show up at a house, where is the cutoff between we should fix this thing and we should replace this thing. I want to hear your opinion, and then I'm going to give mine. I'll see if they're the same.
Yeah, so that's a good question, man. It's a very subjective question of who you ask, right? But the way we operate, if that machine is going to be over $1,000 repair and it's 8 years or older, we would steer you into changing that machine out. Just due to the fact, if we got to go out and make a $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 repair, relatively speaking, you're going to have another one within the next year.
Right.
So it's
I'm right
just
there
a
with you.
snowball.
I'm a little lower on the 1,000. Like if it's me, if it's if it's in Florida, if it's over 8 years old and it's like $400, I'm out, dude. I'm just gonna replace it. Because here's the thing. Yeah, you can get it fixed and running if your guy has that part in stock or can get it quickly. Yes, you can get it fixed and running, but then all the other shit in that same unit is still 8 years old and it's gonna die. So you're rebuying something you already bought, right? So for me, I would prefer to just replace it by a new one. I might go 10 years, I like if it's in Tennessee or Alabama where there's not as much of a salt issue, maybe a little longer than 8 years, but I totally agree with that. I would go 508 for me personally.
Yeah.
Especially in Florida. Okay, cool. And how much is it to put in a brand new unit, and do I really need like the top of the line versus the I got these SEER names and all this crap that nobody really understands.
Yeah.
How much am I looking at for a new unit, and should I buy the most expensive or the cheapest or what?
Well, there's people that want a builder grade unit, and then there's people that want all the bells and whistles because their neighbors got it. A lot of it depends on the construction of the house. Okay. If I personally had some VRBOs, I probably wouldn't go with all the bells and whistles, because the reality is, these people are going to come in, they're going to bury your thermostat, they're going to open up your patio door, and then they're going to walk to the beach. So they don't care. So they're really going to take a beating. Air conditioner price can be anywhere from $65,000, $7,000, all the way up to $15,000 for one machine. A lot of it is, what type of constructions I see, right? So a lot of these homes, especially nowadays, is they're doing the spray foam insulation, right? And they're spray foam in the roofs, and then they're spray foam in the exterior walls. Well, if you just get a 14 SEER air conditioner, okay, it's not going to combat humidity, because that house now is what we call a negative pressure house, okay? The house becomes so tight that you don't lose any temperature. But see, an air conditioner dehumidifies the air, it doesn't cool the air. So the longer the unit runs, the better the humidity is. So you could be in a house, could be 74 degrees on the thermostat, could be 68 degrees on the thermostat, but your humidity could be 65, 68%. And in Florida, you want 45 to 55%. And you can't get in that 40s without a higher SEER 2-stage variable speed machine. And that just unfortunately costs money, man. Milk costs money, eggs cost money, ACs cost money.
Yeah. Realistically, on a house where, what for a nice split unit, what, $8,000, $8,500?
Yeah, I would say the average ticket could be $7,500, give or take, to let people know, like the SEER rating is that yellow energy guide tag you buy, you get on any appliance you buy, right? Any microwave, refrigerator. Same thing with the air conditioner. It's called the seasonal energy efficiency ratio. So 14 SEER, actually, they're not manufacturing that anymore. Now it's 15 SEER. So if you had an air conditioner 10 years ago, it might have been a 13 SEER AC unit. Now they're not even manufacturing 14. Now 15 is going to be the standard. And it goes all the way up to 20 with regular split units. Mini split units, you can get up to 30 SEER on some of them. So it just depends on what the customer wants. A lot of times what I do is I ask the customer, I say, hey, is this your second home? And they say, yes. I say, how many weeks a year you use it? They say, well, we're probably there 12 weeks out of the year. I say, okay, well, do you rent this out? They say, no, we don't rent it out. So at that point, they might want a little better piece of machinery. Okay. If it's solely an income property for them, man, I just go with a 15 SEER unit. If I had, 10 properties down here, that's probably what I would do, even being in the business.
Give me a 2-minute explanation as to the whatever you're putting in. You know, you hear this R22, et cetera. What are these fluids? And when does it get to the point where we should not be pumping more in and replacing it?
Really, once you get a leak, the problem, if you spring a leak in your air conditioner, and that machine holds 10 pounds of refrigerant, you could spend $1,000 just in refrigerant. That doesn't cost the labor and the part. So, you could actually rack up a $2,000 bill pretty quick. And so we're right back to, well, how old's the unit? What condition is the unit? Right? How much money
can you find those? Can you find those leaks? Is it possible to track the leak down?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's possible. You just got to know whether it's repairable at that point. So we can take our leak detectors out, find the leak within 15 minutes, but it's just whether that leak is repairable. Nowadays, everything is aluminum coils, which is hard to repair. Back in the day, they were copper. You could just remove an indoor coil, repair it, put it back together, and it'll last a long time because your leak repair is stronger than the factory. Okay. But nowadays it's all aluminum. So it's replace. So it's, R22 is phased out. Now it's 410A is the refrigerant that they've been using for the past year. And that's even going to get to start phasing out. So it's actually going to become pretty challenging because each manufacturer is going to start manufacturing their own equipment, I think, in 2025 with their own refrigerant. So Carrier's going to use a refrigerant, Train's going to use a refrigerant, Lennox is going to use a different one. So yeah, we're gonna have to carry 20 different cylinders of refrigerant on our trucks. It's gonna be a nightmare.
Yeah, or they're gonna have to keep calling the same guy. That might, but I see. Yeah, look at that. So I guess, long story short, when in doubt, replace the damn thing, right? I mean, that's what I
pretty much. Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it. Replace it. Give me a nice new unit. Your life will be so much easier if you do it that way. Yeah. But I remember back in the day, I couldn't afford to, so that's something to something to consider. My first couple rental properties, the HVAC died. I didn't have the dough. They're like, it was back then it was like $5,000. And I'm like, who's got $5,000? That's like a year's worth of rent, I mean,
that's right.
But anyway, well, listen, David, you rock. And you're in the 30A Destin area. If I want a HVAC job from you, how do I find you?
Oh, you just call, you just look us up. We're we got the most ratings, 5-star ratings in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida.
Wonderful. So, what's the name of the company?
Sowall Air Cooling and Heating, Santa Rosa Beach.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on, brother, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Luke. Appreciate you, man. Be well.
Later.